Everything you need to know and more about heating and cooling, electrical, garage doors, and plumbing is right here, right now, on the Absolute Home Service Podcast.
Hello again, I'm Vince Hauser. I'm the owner at Absolute Services, and we are thrilled that you're joining us for another episode of the Absolute Home Service Podcast. I am one of the co-hosts. I'm here with James McCarter, who is the other co-host. And today we're going to be interviewing Josh Brantingham. He is a home insulation expert and owns a company by the name of Builders Insulation. They service the same service area that Absolute Services does, which is all of Metro Louisville, Metro Lexington, and Metro Elizabethtown. And I believe they actually go a little bit further out, but that covers all the area that we're in. So anyway, we're going to be discussing insulating new homes and existing homes, and what you need to look for with insulation and what your options are.
All right, yeah, guys, welcome back to this edition. Like Vince said, we're going to be talking about home insulation. I'm looking forward to hearing what you got to say and what we can do to learn a little bit about insulation inside of our homes.
All right, Josh, you want to introduce yourself to our audience, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, thanks, Vince, and thanks for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here and talk with you guys. As you already mentioned, own and operate Builders Insulation. We're based here in Louisville, but I grew up in Elizabethtown. That's what I call home, and we service here, there, and as you said, far and wide around the state of Kentucky. I've been doing this for a long time. My dad got me into this industry. He's a custom home builder, and always has put a big emphasis on energy efficiency, making his homes as comfortable as he can. And so when he had struggles getting qualified installers to come and do spray-on insulation, he just decided to start his own company. So he helped me start that when I was just out of high school. So I've been doing it for a long time ever since then.
So he pretty much made you do it for his own purpose.
Pretty much. And there were times where I wasn't sure that was the right career choice, let me tell you.
Well, it sounds like it all worked out for the better, though.
Yes, it did.
Well, so, like we were saying, that the purpose of this podcast here is to, better educate homeowners. That way that they know what their home needs, what kind of maintenance they need, what we're looking for, what type of services that, the home requires every year. So I guess the first thing about what you do with Builders Insulation is, what is the first thing that us as homeowners need to know about insulation?
I would say that if you're an existing homeowner and you own a home that's over 10 years old, I can almost guarantee you, A, that you need more insulation, and that B, it's a good idea for a lot of different reasons for you to go ahead and upgrade that.
All right, and what type of insulation, when you say you need more insulation, why would you need more insulation if we have an older home? Was the insulation just not the same? Has it changed over the years?
Yes, and that's a kind of a twofold answer. A, insulation, it degrades, it deteriorates over time. In the past, they used a lot of paper-based insulation products as well as fiberglass, and both of those, the fiberglass, they used binders that didn't hold up, and so as time goes on, those have lost their integrity, and then insulation has lost a lot of its R value. The paper-based products, like you'll find in your attic, which is mainly cellulose, it's paper, so it biodegrades in the heat and the humidity rather quickly. And they say that cellulose insulation, after about 5 to 8 years, has lost about 30% of its R value. So by upgrading it, you can improve the comfort level in your home, but also improve the efficiency.
Well, you just hit on a big one with me with that transposes itself over to the garage door side of Absolute Services, is where I'm at. R value, what is that?
Basically, the best way I heard it explained that made sense to me was they rate R value. It is the time that heat moves through a product. So like in the lab, I saw this test done with a fiberglass piece of insulation, they set a heat source on one side of it, and then in a laboratory condition where wind is not a factor, it's just radiate. They measure the time the heat moved from one side of that fiberglass piece to the other side. So when the thermostat on the other side of that product started to tick up, they stopped the time. So for the most common fiberglass bat is an R13 bat. That's what we use. We've always used in exterior walls for years and years and years. 13 is basically 13 minutes. It took 13 minutes for that heat to move through that product and start to raise the temperature on the other side.
So it's almost like a thermal efficiency type thing.
Exactly.
The R really stands for resistance.
Yep.
Just, but you know, one thing you mentioned there in that first answer was, you know, that you almost guarantee that I need more insulation. So I am the average homeowner. How in the world am I going to know whether or not I need insulation?
Well, I mean, if you're in doubt at all, the first thing you can do is you can call us. I mean,
Right.
we do free estimates, free, I call them an audit. And basically, we're going to come in and we're going to look at the areas of your home that we can have access to. Most likely, you have insulation in your walls.
Right.
And it's probably not the best type of insulation. It's probably an R13 or R11 bat, depending how old it is, and it's probably lost a lot of that R value. However, it's still taking up space inside that cavity. And there are some extreme measures that you can take to add insulation to that cavity, but I tend to dissuade customers from doing that because I always want to encourage you to do an upgrade that's going to put money back in your pocket. I don't want to encourage you to spend thousands of dollars that you're not going to see a return on that investment. So usually the areas that we can access is your attic. Almost always we can get into your attic and we can look at that insulation. If your house is on a crawl space, we can almost always get into your crawl space. So those are the two main areas when it comes to retrofit. That's where we go first.
You know, being that we're in the heating and air business, you know, insulation comes up a lot in our business as well. And I've seen pictures where they've taken walls apart after, you know, many years down the road, and the bats of insulation that were put in the wall had dropped like 2 feet. So the top 2 feet of the house all the way around virtually was not even insulated.
So what would you do to kind of combat that? Is there something that you can do differently than that, you know, just a traditional kind of like rolled in type of insulation?
Yes, you know, I would never use that rolled in or fiberglass bat material in an attic. And the problem with that in that environment is that, you know, heat is rising. So in the wintertime, and as you know, you guys are in HVAC, it costs more to heat than it does to cool, typically. So, you know, in the wintertime, you're heating that home, that heat is rising, and it's looking for areas and pathways to escape your home. With a roll-in product, it's sitting there in between the rafters. So basically everywhere there's a rafter, we've got a break or a void in the insulation, a crack, if you will. And it's very easy for that heat to radiate through that and then escape your home. And as it's escaping, it's then creating a vacuum that's pulling in cold air, you know, that you're having to heat. And that's where that problem develops inefficiency. So by using a blown-in product, whether it be a blown-in fiberglass or a spray-on foam product, those things are monolithic. They cover the entire surface. We blow over the top of the rafters, so we have no voids, we have no breaks in our insulation blanket, if you will.
Okay, so what kind of so you mentioned, you know, blown in, rolled in, you talked about, you know, closed cell, I believe you mentioned some cellulose. What different types of insulation are there? Because I've heard open cell, I've heard closed cell, I've heard polyurethane. How many different types and what of those are recommended to actually, you know, put inside of a home?
Good question. And, you know, I call ourselves a full service insulation company. So we use, and we are proficient in the installation of all of the major insulation products used today, accepted by our, you know, our local building codes. So I'll kind of start at the cheapest and work my way up to the best. The standard roll insulation, that is your cheapest product. Has been around for, you know, 50 years or more, maybe 100 years. And it is your cheapest product, but it's also your least efficient. We use that when efficiency is not a priority, or when it's just the only application that will work, which is rare. Usually we can use something else. Stepping up from that, we have blown-in cellulose. I mentioned that before. It's a paper-based blown-in. You know, it's usually used in retrofit applications. If you have a wall cavity that has no insulation, we can drill and fill that exterior wall. In an attic, it's just loose fill blown across the top of your attic, on top of your drywall. It's a good product. It's a very efficient product. It's very airtight. It works really well. The downside to it is that it does deteriorate. It's a paper, cellulose means, it's a paper. So it will deteriorate, it will settle in your attic, and it will settle in your exterior walls. You can overcome that by packing it tighter, and that will slow that process, but it is still going to deteriorate over time. Stepping up from that, we have blown-in fiberglass. That is the most common product used today in an attic. It's a very good product. The brand that we use is made from 70% recycled glass, so that it is a green product. It's not all made from virgin material, and it does not deteriorate because it's made of glass. It will stand the test of time. If I blow 13 inches in there, which is an R38, which is what I recommend, kind of a baseline, it will be that thickness, 20 years from now. The downside to it is that it is a little bit lighter and fluffier than cellulose, and certainly than spray-on foam, which we'll talk about in a minute. So it is not quite as airtight as I would like. But it is still an extremely good product, an efficient product, and a very economical product. Stepping up to our Cadillac of products is spray foam. I mean, spray foam is the hottest insulation product on the market. A lot of building codes are being changed to basically encourage you to use spray foam because of how efficient it is. And we do have two types. We have open cell, which is about, the product that we use is 3.9 R values per inch. And I'm only saying this not to make it complicated, but to explain the difference between open cell and closed cell. So open cell has a R value of 3.9 per inch. It's kind of like a memory foam mattress. You can push it. It's very soft. We use that a lot in exterior walls. We use it in attics, dry environments. It does really well in. And then we have closed cell foam. Closed cell foam is more than twice as dense as open cell foam. And the pores of it are completely sealed. It's made of little tiny individual little bubbles, if you will. And those bubbles are sealed, which gives it the characteristic, of being a closed cellular product. It will not let water through, certainly no air, no moisture vapor, nothing passes it.
Sounds like a better insulating product.
It is, and it is more than double the R value. We can get, close to 7.3 per inch on a board foot of R value. So it's a very efficient product, very hard. And we use that in environments where we're concerned about moisture. It will not accept moisture, therefore it will not retain moisture, therefore there's no risk of mold. Mold is a big, hot button topic right now too. And we would use closed cell foam like in a crawl space encapsulation, where the dark, moist area, not a lot of air movement, we would use closed cell foam because we know it will help us seal out the moisture, and we don't have to worry about it accepting any moisture and creating a mold hazard.
What about the diminishing values of closed cell foam? Does it ever break down or deteriorate over time?
No, both of those foams are completely impervious to deterioration. The one thing that would deteriorate them, and this does not play a factor inside a home, the only thing that will affect foam is ultraviolet, so the sun. But by using it where it's supposed to be used and not exposing it to that, there's really nothing that can deteriorate it or cause it to rot or lose its R value or anything like that.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, as you know, Josh, we're in the garage door business as well, and our Cadillac doors has closed cell foam. So it. And one of the things that I've seen, like when our doors, when that's injected in there, it's almost like glue. Yep. Because it glues that whole door together, and that creates this like just awesome garage door. And I always thought, man, if I just took all these doors and lined my whole attic with it, I'd be in shape.
The biggest way that I always explain to people, like when, in a garage door, when you're talking about a vinyl back insulated or like a polyurethane style door insulated, so the difference between polystyrene, polyurethane is one's going to be that more traditional, like that foam that you can, styrofoam that breaks and falls apart, which would, kind of translate to the closed and open cells, versus the styrofoam to the actual polyurethane. Lot thicker, far less gaps, a lot better R value.
So if I'm the average homeowner and I'm like, I just heard what you told me about insulation. So if I stick my head up in the attic, what really should I be looking for to know whether or not I need, insulation, or I don't need insulation, or it's deteriorated. Because I'm quite certain I'm not going to know the difference between cellulose and fiberglass, and I'm just going to be a big pile of mush that's up there when I stick my head
Well,
up there.
considering what I've seen on his Facebook, I'm not sticking my head in the attic. I'm not sticking my head in a crawl space. I've seen snakes, nope ropes is what I like to call them. I've seen spiders. So yeah, I guess to his question, what would you look for when you do, if you're brave enough to stick your head up there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing I'd say is if you're uncomfortable at all being on top of a ladder or you're worried about safety, please, don't bother. Just call us and we'll come out. Like I said, it's free of charge, and we'll risk our lives and we'll climb up there and we'll tell you what you're looking at. But if you do have access to your attic, I mean, 99% of the time, your attic is probably framed with, at the most, 2x8 ceiling rafters, which is about a 7¼ inch piece of wood. If you can see the top of your rafter sticking above your insulation, automatically you need insulation. Probably it's a 2x6, sometimes even a 2x4, so which is it's even shorter. So if you stick your head up there and you can see wood sticking above your insulation, you know you need it. The other thing that you can look for is wind drifting. We install in new construction now. We put a baffle. It's a baffle. Basically, what it is just a dam. It goes out at the edge of the home where the soffit starts, where the drywall ends, and then kind of a little cliff there, and it falls into your soffit. Soffit is designed to allow air to come into your attic, and that's a good thing. We want that air. What we don't want is we don't want our insulation, unchecked flowing into that area. So if you shine a light down toward the eaves and you see that insulation tapering off over there, and you can see a lot of times drywall where there was not that baffle installed, you know that you need us to come in. We'll install that baffle. And then make sure that your insulation is the right thickness all the way out to that eave point.
Got it. So what? So on that point, now we know when we need insulation. What type of insulation should we use, or when, like let's say we call you out for your in-home audit, as you like to call it, we have you out. How are you going to go about recommending what type of insulation that we need to go with in our home?
Well, usually it boils down to the design of your home and how your home is built. As I said before, and you have to trust me on this. I know that there's a lot of homeowners out there that have been kind of cheated or screwed over, if you will, by greedy contractors, and I really have made it my goal to not be that person and try to have enough facts and evidence to explain my proposal, what I'm suggesting that my homeowner do. And I'm going to look at the design of your home, and I'm going to say, listen, if we use these products to improve your insulation in these areas, I think that this is how I'm going to be able to give you the biggest return on your investment. In other words, I want you to spend the least and save the most.
Got it. So you're basically, you want to present yourself as a professional.
Exactly.
Right, not a fly-by-nighter.
So if I mean, from what you said earlier, the spray foam's the Cadillac of insulation. So if I've got the most common, most houses I know don't have it, and I'm like, Josh, I only buy Cadillac, and I want spray foam in my house. So what happens to all that other insulation in there?
Well, we'll vac it out. We have to get rid of it. And we have these gigantic gas engine vacuums that are sitting in our truck. And we use a 6-inch hose that will run through your house and take it into the attic. And we have these bags, these vacuum bags that are the size of a pickup truck. And we will remove all of that. And that's a really good thing. You were talking about scary things that you've seen on my website that we found in attics and crawl spaces. If your home is older, an attic and a crawl space are two places that humans don't usually go. Unfortunately, animals and critters, they love those spaces. They're warm, they're dry, they're great places for them to hide out.
And insulation makes great beds.
It does. So, over the years, you can get a lot of unwanted things added to that insulation that the animals leave behind. So backing that out and removing that is it's healthy for the home. We've had customers that call us and like, listen, we found some nasty stuff up there, and we're not even talking about insulation efficiency anymore. We want that out because we want to improve the air quality in our home. And so we can go in there, remove all that, and start from a clean slate.
Now, you've given 1, 2, and 3 reasons why I need to be calling Builders Insulation and not going up there myself.
Have you ever vacuumed one out that you didn't find like tons of mice?
No, I mean, that's almost a given. And I mean,
Right.
with cellulose, it's very packable, which is
Right.
what we see a lot. You go up there and shine a light, and it looks like you're looking at an interstate system a lot of times, where these mice have worn, you've seen it, like spider
Right.
web of paths through them. They have holes and tunnels, and they love that stuff.
It's nasty, and I have it in my house. I mean, Josh did spray the majority of our house, but part of it was very difficult, and we put that in there, and I have that in my. I don't like it.
Sounds like it's time for a change. Well, so in the home, what walls do you want to insulate? Because I know we've got exterior walls, we have ceilings. You've got 1 and 2 story houses. You've got houses that have crawl spaces and interior walls, things like that. What walls are must have? What walls must be insulated to have the most efficiency?
What we're trying to do is we're trying to create the most airtight and efficient. We call it a building envelope, and basically it's a bubble. We want to make sure that we have a conditioned space, and that we have sealed that conditioned space as best we can. So to answer your question, when it comes to walls, we want to insulate, of course, the exterior walls. But then, a wall that oftentimes gets overlooked is the wall between the house and the garage.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people aren't sure, is that an exterior wall or is it an interior wall because I'm my garage? Your garage is not part of your conditioned space. Even if it's got an awesome, insulated garage door that you guys have installed, it really helps the garage. We can't call that part of the conditioned envelope because there's no connection with the HVAC system to the garage. So your exterior walls, the partition wall between the house and the garage, and then another area that I see that's overlooked quite often is if you have a basement, it's the rim joist in your basement. And basically that's the wood band where all of your floor joists terminate that sits on top of the concrete or concrete block wall.
Okay.
A lot of times that just, people didn't want the insulation left exposed in an unfinished basement. So you go down there, you shine a flashlight or turn a light on, you just see bare wood. If you see bare wood there, that's a very, very big area of air infiltration in a home. And by doing a minimal amount of insulation work, we can really help seal up the house quite a bit.
I know when I've looked at that, even if it is insulated, it's usually somebody cut some bats and stapled it up there, and it really is not doing anything.
Right.
I mean, I've looked at that and I've tried to figure out ways because I've built a few houses in my life, but I don't think that you can actually insulate that any other way than foam. I mean, and I'm not an insulation guy. I've just done it a little bit. So
Now with those, so you said exterior walls, basements, things like that. Is there a specific type of insulation that you would want? So, like for instance, would you insulate the attic with a different type of insulation versus the exterior walls?
Yes, and again, the exterior walls, what I would love to do is I would love to be able to go in there and drill a 1-inch hole in every cavity. So we're going to go around the exterior of your home. If there's nothing in that wall, and homes, I would say constructed prior to 1985, there's a good chance there's nothing in those walls. And if there's nothing in the walls, honestly, it's the best case scenario for that customer because I can use multiple products. I can guarantee that we fill that cavity up completely with the right product, and I can promise them a huge return on their investment. It is going to make a radical difference in the way their home feels, and the way their energy performs. So if that's the case, what I'm going to suggest to them almost all the time is we drill a 1-inch hole in each cavity. So your cavity is 16 inches wide. So basically every 16 inches around the whole perimeter of the home, I'm going to drill a 1-inch hole. And through that 1-inch hole, we're going to inject a high density, it's a very finely shredded fiberglass. And in a 2x4 wall, which is 3.5 inch thick, I can give them an R15. And I know that doesn't mean a lot to most people, but an R15 is 2 R values above what is standard in even a new construction. Most new construction homes built today are insulated with an R13 product. So if that's the case, I can go in there and do that. I can guarantee that that insulation will never settle, it will never sag. And there's multiple, other benefits to that fiberglass in that wall. Rodents don't like it, as we just talked about that being an issue. Mice don't like it. And it's also very good when it comes to moisture. Fiberglass is kind of like an anti-sponge. It doesn't want to absorb moisture. So let's just say down the road you have a window flashing that fails and you get some water infiltration in there. You don't have to freak out and rip your drywall out and remove that insulation because you're worried about mold and rot. That insulation it doesn't want that water. The water will pass through it and either drain in or drain out, depending on the situation, but it won't retain it long enough to create, mold spores.
It might mess up my carpet, but my wall's fine.
Exactly.
A lot easier to replace the carpet.
I have a question. You mentioned that cross space encapsulation, and I've been involved in several homes that with cross spaces, and up until very recently, all of them, every single one of them, you were required to put all these vents in there and leave everything completely open. And I always wondered, okay, why am I insulating this floor and now I'm leaving this big, huge tornado of air flowing underneath my house, but the government says that's what I have to do. Yep. Can you explain that whole deal, why they said do it now, this way, and then now why we don't necessarily have to do that anymore?
Yeah, I think there's a handful of reasons, but I think they all kind of boil down to the fact that energy efficiency has not been as big of a priority as it is now ever before. Energy costs, it was so cheap to buy energy, whether it be gas, electric, whatever, that we weren't really concerned with making our homes as efficient as we could, like we are now with rising costs. Like you mentioned, up until just recently, when you built a house on a crawl space, you had to put those vents in every so often. You had to insulate the floor system. And the idea was that building envelope that we talked about, it stopped at your floor. So basically everything in your crawl space underneath that, it was treated like outside. Like, you had a foundation holding your home, but your building envelope stopped there.
Right.
And honestly, that works in some climate zones. Problem with our climate zones, we have a lot of humidity. Mm-hmm. And that humidity is allowed to come into that crawl space through those vents, and then it gets trapped in there. And it develops mold, it helps the wood system under there rot quicker. It makes the home, you've been in houses, I've been in houses where the crawl space has given the home an odor. The whole home, and it's not a good odor.
No.
So, the evolving building science has now, trying to steer us away. They've gotten the codes changed. For a while, the building scientists were at odds with the code writers because they didn't want to give up their vents. And the building scientists people were saying, this is a really bad idea. We need to move away from that. We need to give homeowners another option.
Right.
And so now, and I tell people this all the time, if I have a home on a crawl space, it will be an encapsulated crawl space. That is the only way to go in our climate zone.
Yeah. And the other thing that we see, being that do the heating and air work as well, is it really messes with the ductwork. I don't know what destroys it per se, but we go in houses and there's gaping holes in the ductwork. It is crazy. We sometimes have to replace the entire duct system under a house in these crawl spaces. And I'm assuming it's from the moisture or whatever, but once there's holes in there, anything can get in there.
That's right.
It's crazy.
Well, and what I tell people with an encapsulated crawl space, not only am I improving the efficiency of your home by adding a new insulation system that's far better, I'm also kind of killing two birds with one stone, if you will. I'm providing you with a waterproofing system.
Right.
That closed cell foam that we use, and if it's okay, I'll just give them a brief example or explanation of what an encapsulated crawl space is. So when we go in to do an encapsulation, we're going to put down a extremely thick poly down on the ground. Usually we like to use a 10 mil poly, which is,
that's thick.
It's very thick.
It's like a tarp.
It's like a tarp. It's hard to puncture that. You have to be trying to puncture it. We're going to cover the ground with that. We're going to seal our seams where we have to do them. We're going to seal around your posts and your supports. And we're going to take that poly over to the exterior wall, and we're actually going to bring it up the wall anywhere from 6 inches to a foot. It's kind of just sitting there. Then we're going to bring in our closed cell foam rig, and we're going to spray closed cell foam around 2 inches, a nominal 2 inches is what we're shooting for. And we're going to start at the ground, and we're going to seal that 10 mil poly to the wall and bring that foam all the way up, sealing that concrete or masonry wall, whatever type it is. And we're going to go up, we're going to seal the rim joist and bring that all the way up to the bottom of whatever your floor system is. Usually it's plywood. And so what we've done at that point is we have, as is the name, we've encapsulated that crawl space. We are locking out any moisture, any water from being able to enter that crawl space, either from the ground or through the wall. And we've stopped any unconditioned air movement from the outside into that crawl.
So you block off all those vents.
Exactly. We'll cut a piece of rigid foam board, seal in that hole where that vent is, and then spray over it.
You're controlling the own environment down there.
Exactly. You know, I tell people, look at it, because people kind of get alarmed by that. Like, well, now, I have no ventilation. What's going to happen? I said, well, let's just think about this. I want you to think about your crawl space as if it was a basement. Are you, if you have a basement, are you worried that you don't have vents letting in outside air all the way around it? No, you're not. You'd be alarmed if you had that type of air moving through your basement. I said, so what we have to do now, and this is where you guys come in with the HVAC, is we need to provide a little bit of air movement, of air conditioned, quality to that crawl space. Usually, if we can get it there, what I recommend is on one corner or one side of the crawl space, we install an air return, creating a vacuum. Then on the other side, we introduce a little bit of a supply, and they can be very small. We do not need much.
Right.
We just need a little bit of air changeover in there, and it helps that crawl space communicate with the rest of the house. So whatever the temperature that you keep your house, that's the temperature of your crawl space. Whatever the humidity level is in your home, it will be the same. If you have hardwood floors, you won't have to deal with those hardwood floors expanding and contracting as the seasons change.
Right.
Which is a big problem around here. It'll improve your entire home.
Now, doing the encapsulation, is that going to mess with those homeowners that could possibly have something like a sump pump or anything down there?
No, and a lot of times, when we do our evaluation, we're going to look at, and there's a lot of signs that can tell us, does this crawl space show evidence that it has a persistent water infiltration issue? And to what extent or what level of moisture infiltration are we dealing with? And a lot of times, if we see water lines on the foundation where this thing has gotten water in it quite a bit and it's happened over and over again, we'll recommend a sump crock system. And we'll put the drain line to collect that water underneath our poly. And then we will seal our vapor barrier around that sump crock that you just mentioned. And basically what that does is it helps relieve what I would call hydraulic pressure from, affecting our membrane. It keeps that water at bay. And it's kind of an added level of peace of mind.
How often do you actually see that in crawl spaces? Because I'm going to guess that a lot of crawl spaces have that problem, and homeowners actually never know it.
I would say that there is standing water at least 3 months out of the year in over 50% of existing crawl spaces.
That's like a mold haven.
That's a lot.
Yep.
That sounds like a big issue. Well, that's actually a lot of really good information as far as the encapsulation. It's a lot of stuff that personally myself didn't know, which definitely appreciate you bringing that kind of stuff up. But with the encapsulation, with the types of insulation and stuff that you've mentioned, whether it's the spray in or the blown in, how does the insulation itself, whether it's the insulation upstairs in the attic or the encapsulation downstairs, how does that make the home more energy efficient?
Well, basically, every time that your furnace or air conditioner comes on, there's a kind of like your electric meter starts turning. That's money that's being spent. So basically, if we can, to kind of dumb it down a little bit, if we can reduce the amount of times that furnace or air conditioning system has to come on, we are saving you money. And in the winter, that heat that you're trying to heat your home, it's constantly trying to escape. And if it finds voids, if it finds cracks, if it finds areas that it can escape, and I would say exfiltrate the home, it will do it. When it does that, it creates a vacuum in the home. Now, that air has to be replaced. Where's that air going to come from? It's going to come from outside. It's going to be cold. It's going to be unconditioned. It's going to have to be conditioned. And that's where your furnace comes on, kicks on, and heats that new cold air up. So we want to look for ways of tightening up that envelope, sealing up that bubble. Usually, though, when we go into a home where we need to improve the insulation in the crawl space, improve the insulation in the attic, we have seen, tremendous change in their efficiency, improvement. We can save a average customer anywhere from 30 to 35% on their energy costs.
Wow.
So I got one question. I've got a 13-year-old daughter. How do you insulate when she walks to the mailbox and leaves the door open in the winter? I mean, surely you got a cure for that.
Take the electric bill out of her allowance. That's about the only thing I know.
I think they make doors.
She doesn't understand that door closes, and I was only going out for a second. I didn't need to close it.
A second is all you need.
My 10-year-old, we just got a puppy. And of course that puppy has to be let out all the time. So it's his job to let the puppy out, to do its thing right before bed. Well, I was already in my room, ready to go to bed, and said, hey, Judah, take the dog out. So he takes Louie out, comes back in. All right, Dad, I put him in his kennel. All right, good night, good night. I wake up the next morning, walk out. The front door has been standing open all night, about 2 inches.
Do you think it's a school system issue, or?
Well, at least I hope your walls. I hope your walls are well insulated. That's
They need to go over that open and close issue. So I had nothing to do. I would just, it made me think of that. I'm like, I got this great insulated house, and my kids leave the daggone door open.
Yeah, that definitely.
Sorry to sidetrack you there, James.
Hey, no, it's not a problem at all. So, you've brought up a lot of really good things. Whether attic insulation, walls insulation, encapsulation. I know that there's going to be a lot of variables here, but I'll kind of let you take away with this, so we homeowners can kind of understand what we're looking for. How much should it cost, or what type of investment should we be looking for when we go to insulate our house? And you can kind of break that down in the the different types of insulation, or what you would recommend, or the encapsulation itself.
Well, first thing I would say is that most of the time when we submit our proposal, the customer is surprised by how affordable it is. People expect to have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars, and that's just not the case. I always, usually I'm able to tell the customer, like, look, I think, that you're going to make this money back within 2 to 3 years. I've never seen a customer do a job where, and we try to follow up and do a survey. Most of the time, the longest it'll push out, even if we do a very expensive upgrade where we use a lot of foam, things like that, within 5 years, they've made that money back. And they've had a much more comfortable home. And they've put a lot less miles, if you will, on their HVAC system. I mean, every time that furnace comes on, it's like driving your car. Those are hours that it's running, and it's going to wear out quicker. So by improving their insulation, there's multiple ways that it's going to benefit them. I hate giving trying to give a customer an idea of what it's going to cost, just because every home is different. But with the blown fiberglass, which is what I would usually recommend for your attic, most of the time that's what you're going to want to do. I can usually tell a customer it's not going to cost you less than or more than $1 a square foot. So if you pull out your deed to your home and you find you live in a 1,500 square foot ranch, that's pretty easy math. Crawl spaces get a little bit more complicated, because it all depends on how tall that crawl space wall is, basically how far up out of the ground your builder constructed that home. I think before we started, we talked about how tight is too tight in a crawl space. Some crawl spaces are 2 concrete blocks high, which is 16 inches, so that's that amount of square feet. Some of them are 6 concrete blocks out of the ground. So crawl spaces, I would say though too, you are not going to usually spend more than $1.50 a square foot in your crawl space, unless you've just got a giant crawl.
Gotcha. And you mentioned something about, you know, the different types of, you know, it really just depends on the application and things like that, but you wouldn't exceed a certain amount. Is there any type of, you know, when you're going to go around and cut those 1-inch holes in each cavity, is there any type that you would not be able to service? For example, my house that we're currently in the process of remodeling is plaster wall, so it's got that metal meshing behind there. Is that something that you would still be able to insulate as well?
Yes, we're actually, today, we're doing a big, it's a condo project downtown Louisville, and it's an old building, and they're totally rehabbing it, and we're drilling through that plaster with that chicken wire, as we call it.
Yes.
And I mean, our guys do not enjoy it. Trust me, it's not fun. But they make drill bits that allow us to drill through that. And the great thing about doing it that way, whether it's drywall or plaster or whatever type of it is, we're only drilling a 1-inch hole. And then in years past, like when I first got into this business, we didn't have the technology or the ability to blow through anything less than like a 2.5-inch hole. So we had to drill this big old hole, you know, and put hundreds of them in your walls. It's a large home. And then when it came to repairing that, we left the customer with a pretty big job. Because,
see you.
Yeah, exactly. It's up to you. We are great insulators. We are terrible drywallers. But they had to go and they had to, you know, if you know anything about drywall, they had to tape and mud over each of those holes. And that is a tall task. With the way we do it now, it's a 1-inch hole. When we're done, we have this little handgun, and we inject this really hard, dense foam into that 1-inch hole, and it dries in a few minutes. So while we're cleaning up, it's drying. We come back and we cut that flush with the drywall. All that we leave the customer with is they take a putty knife and some quick spackle, and they just hit that one time, let it dry, sand it one time, and they can paint. They don't have to tape it and apply, you know, multiple coats of drywall mud. It just really simplifies that part of the process.
Simplifying it's nice, because I'm in the same boat with you. I am not a drawaller.
I know one of the things that he didn't mention that I saw as a huge benefit when we did our house with the spray foam was noise. I mean, you literally can't hear anything outside that house. Now, I know that that's not part of the insulation deal, but it is a tremendous side effect in having that. I mean, unless you're standing right next to the window, you will never know what's going on outside that house. I mean, it is crazy.
That's very true. And, you know, we get asked to help, come in and help, where we've got bedrooms on top of bedrooms, you know, in between floors, and, you know, you got kids trying to, you know, older kids trying to sleep downstairs and younger kids banging around upstairs. We can do the same thing inside your home. We can go in and we can drill a small hole, and just like Vince said, we can inject either foam or acoustical blown fiberglass into walls and ceiling assemblies. And, you know, if you're dealing with, you know, a lot of sound transmission, unwanted sound transmission in your home, like laundry rooms, like I hate hearing my dryer run. I hate hearing water run through my pipes, you know, from the second floor down to the first floor. Every time somebody flushes a toilet or somebody's in the shower. We can solve a lot of those problems and make a big difference. We can turn that volume way down on that problem.
Yeah, see, and that's something that's nice too. So like, you know, I'm right there with you. I don't like to hear the laundry or anything like that, but more so on that, I've got one of those nice new fancy front loaders that likes to ding and sing a song for 3 minutes every time it's done. So if we can shut that off, that'd be great. Or if you can tell me where to find the speaker.
I mean, like what would happen to me? And now when we go to a hotel, I mean, like, you know, people at one time used to be able to go to hotels, but I mean, I can't sleep anymore because I'm like, man, there's like crazy noise everywhere, and my bedroom is like, it's almost like a dungeon. You don't hear anything that's going on, you know, outside. I mean, it is completely silent. So anyway, I know he didn't bring that up, but that impressed me as much as anything. Was like, my gosh, I can't hear anything.
Well, yeah, like you said, it is a huge side effect. But so as far as insulation goes, you know, for your average homeowner, is is it a DIY project? Is this something that, you know, that we should attempt ourselves? Or, you know, what is your experience on that?
Sometimes yes. I mean, sometimes it's doable. I'm never gonna say that it's impossible or try to discourage somebody that wants to try it themselves. There are, like, you can go to any of the box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards. They all offer the rental machines, and you can buy your own insulation. I would, you know, the caveat to that, you know, the asterisk that I would put on that is that you aren't going to save as much money as you think that you are. Because we buy our insulation by the tractor trailer load, we get it at a very discounted price, and we pass that benefit along to our customers. If they go to Lowe's or Home Depot, one of those places, they are going to spend 3 times, you know, on insulation what we do. And I would encourage a customer to put a price tag on their own time. Your time is valuable; it's worth something. And when you add all that together, a lot of times you're doing a job that, you know, you're not a professional in, and you're spending time that you could be doing what you are really good at, doing something that you're not good at, that you haven't done before, and you're really not saving the money that you think that you are. I can do a side-by-side comparison. And the other thing I would warn people about is you go there and you know, you've got some guy helping you pick out the insulation and trying to figure out how many bales, for example. Say you want to reblow your attic. You want to add 12 inches of blown insulation in your attic. And so you're sitting there and you're trying to figure, okay, how many bales do I need? How many square feet do I have? Most of the time, you don't get what you need. You don't get enough. And you end up not accomplishing the goal that you set out to do, which was increase your efficiency and make your home more comfortable and save money. So if you're going to do it yourself, I would just encourage you to educate yourself as much as possible. Do your homework, do your research. But then it never hurts to have someone such as myself come in and give you a comparison quote.
Yeah, I know that the big trick there is we'll give you the machine for free if you buy all the product.
Yep.
You know, and I've seen the numbers, and I've seen sometimes where, you know, companies like Josh actually cost less than what, and you don't, when you find out after the fact, it's a little bit on the disheartening side to think that I just spent all day long insulating my attic. He would have done it in a couple of hours, and I wouldn't have had to touch a thing.
And the other thing about insulation, it's kind of like water behind a dam. We're trying to build a dam to hold in your conditioned air. And you can build a really great dam, you know, if you're building a lake in your backyard. And if you have one void, you have one flaw in that, it compromises all the other good things that you did. Insulation is no different. You want to get up, you want to fix the problems in your attic, for example. You can blow in great insulation, you know, and cover 90%, 95% of that surface area. But because you don't know exactly what you're looking at or what it needs to look like, and you overlook a couple of areas that are problem areas in your attic that we would recognize because we've been doing this a long time, and you miss that, you know, you have not accomplished what you intended to.
Right. So a lot of what I'm hearing is that you would, you know, recommend an expert, because I don't want to not have the right product. I don't want to overpay. I don't want it to be done incorrectly. I don't want to have to pay somebody to come back and fix it when I don't do it right.
I'll add in one more that hadn't been brought up. It is an extreme mess. and if you don't know what you're doing with that thing, you can create the biggest mess that you have ever seen in your life.
Yep.
And lastly, as we deal with this in HVAC, and we spoke about how, you know, what time Josh works every day. He's like, you know, I usually, we're going at 6 o'clock. You know, when homeowners do it themselves, they typically don't start at 6 o'clock. And I don't know if you've been in an attic in July in Louisville. It's typically 150 degrees in that attic.
You know, I've had to climb up there a couple of times when the wiring for the photo eyes in the garage is, you know, they're messed up. So you have to climb up there. No, it is very, very hot. Yes. So more power to you guys, and that's, you know, to Vince's point. One other reason why I wouldn't want to go up inside of an attic at any point, especially in July.
The other thing about those machines too that Vince is talking about that you can rent, our machines blow in our trucks. They're huge, and they blow very, very fast. You can blow about 60 bales an hour, so a little bit over 1 a minute if we cranked it up. The ones that you get at Lowe's, you'll blow 1 bale about every 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, and what I've seen, because I've seen them do this before, it's hard for the guy in the truck to keep up with the machine.
Yeah.
If you get the one from Lowe's, you're taking a nap and
Right.
waiting for the next one to go.
And if it's hot in that attic, you're dying up there waiting.
Right.
Well, and,
Yeah.
and on that note too, you mentioned earlier about, you know, having these vacuum bags the size of a pickup truck out there. Move it, where's the bags? How do you take the bags off? What am I gonna do with the old insulation that's up there that has to come out before the new comes in?
Yeah, that is not a DIY thing. That is not something that you can rent or that's available to the average consumer. And there's reasons for that. I mean, it's a technical piece of equipment, and so it's very expensive. So yeah, that is something that you would not be able to do at all from a DIY standpoint.
Got it. So from step one, I'm going to be giving builders insulation a call. I don't want to do any of that stuff. So from your professional standpoint, you know, I'm needing this insulation. You know, like you just mentioned, like, you know, different technical pieces. When should I look for a professional? At one point in time, because I know that with the spray in or the foam insulation, that requires like a spray gun, you know. And I've seen the videos and stuff that you guys post to your Facebook. They look like they're in full hazmat suits. When do I need a professional?
Well, it never hurts. I mean, when you know to call an expert in and just find out what you're looking at. I've said this 5 times already, and I'm going to continue to say it. Call me. My quotes are free, and there's 0 obligation. And I will tell you I will tell you whether or not, hey, I think you need some insulation. I think your house needs some professional help. And then I'll leave that decision for you to make as far as if you want to attempt to do some of it yourself or if you'd like us to handle it for you. But you just won't know until you have someone come in there and kind of peel it back, kind of open up everything that we can, and expose it and find out what we're looking at.
Right. Now, a lot of our times, you know, especially with myself, with Vince, with you, you know, with what we've got going on in a day's time, it's hard to set aside, you know, okay, I'm going to need 2 hours here, I'm going to need 3 hours here. What kind of time frame are you looking at for, you know, insulating a house or re-insulating a house?
Well, as we just talked about, you know, my equipment is very large. We want to show up. We want to do a good job, but we don't want to waste time. We don't want to be there taking up your time any longer than we have to. We can generally blow a standard attic, you know, average size attic. Once we get set up, the blowing part probably takes less than 2 hours. Usually from parking the truck to leaving, it's less than half a day.
You can be in and out of the day then?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, that's very convenient, very convenient. So how would our listeners find a professional home insulation contractor here in our area?
I mean, the internet is a great place to start. You know, it seems like that has become where most people go. For example, if you just type in spray on insulation, Louisville, Kentucky, myself and a couple other companies are going to pop up right there at the top of the list. There's, you know, I know that we post reviews, we post ratings, we're a member of the Better Business Bureau, all of those things. You want to use all of those methods to kind of filter through and find a couple of them. I do not mind at all to have, you know, someone quote me and my competitor. We are very competitive. You know, our quality speaks for itself. Our customers all, you know, will vouch for that. We have a very good rating with the Better Business Bureau. We have no complaints. But use those methods to find a couple and call them and have a couple quotes done. I also tell people, you know, trust your gut. When you invite a professional, so-called professional out, what's your impression? A lot of times, you know, you can learn all you need to know just by talking with the salesman.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we're breaking in very close on our 1 hour kind of target. I will say it's been extremely helpful. I've learned a whole lot myself, and you know, and as I've said, I've used Josh a few times in the past. So I'm pretty familiar with his operation. I would say, you know, when you're going to look for somebody to do it, and you are in Central Kentucky, anywhere Southern Indiana, don't even waste your time. Just call him. I mean, we don't. I don't bring anybody on here that I don't use myself or I wouldn't be willing to use and I don't know. Most of our listeners have all used our services from time to time, so there's really, in my mind, there's not another option. So, and I mean, we appreciate you coming on and sharing all that with us. I mean, I think it was extremely helpful. There's a lot of this stuff I really didn't know about when I needed to add insulation. But anyway, I appreciate your time today.
Well, and that's like you said, the purpose of this is to bring this information to our homeowners and everyone in our area. But again, like on what Ben said, we do appreciate you coming on and giving us some insight to your experience and knowledge in this industry. We definitely appreciate it.
I appreciate the invitation.
So if listeners want to get a hold of you, what's the best way? I mean, what's your contact information?
My email, cell phone, I'm happy to give all that out. My website, we have a contact us page on our website.
Okay.
And I can give all that to you, and you can share that.
All right. We will definitely get that up and look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, Vince. I look forward to assisting you guys and your customers.
All right. And to the listeners, we appreciate you all listening. We've got more episodes to come. And, share and like it.